So I'll call to order the Utility Commission meeting for Wednesday, September 11th, 2024, 5 p.m. The agenda was properly posted and we have a quorum. Okay? You can do a visual roll call if that's okay.
Yep.
And then number 3, public appearances. Anyone out in the Ethernet there? Okay, moving forward. Number 4, consider or discuss and consider the minutes of the Utility Commission meeting on July 10th, 2024. Can I have a motion to approve, please?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And no one abstaining. Thank you. Number 5, discuss and consider approval of the vouchers. I'll make a motion to approve the bills as posted. Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No one abstaining. And number 6, presentation to the board. Sewer long-range cash analysis by elders. Documents. Go ahead.
Thanks, Charlie. So John Cameron's here from Ellers. So a couple months ago, I asked the Utility Commission for some additional funds to kind of do a deep dive into our sewer utility, make sure that our rates were consistent and keeping up with what was required, as well as kind of putting together a long-range cash forecast. So he's here to present that today.
Great. Good evening, everybody. I'm John Cameron with Ellers, and in addition to kind of doing the day-to-day advisory work that we all do at Ellers, one of my areas of expertise is in doing utility rate work and long-range cash flow analysis. So thanks for having us here this evening to present the results of the long-range cash flow analysis. So, in terms of the what we're going to kind of cover in the groundwork and why we're really looking at this is kind of twofold. Number one, we just want to look at is the sewer utility meeting its revenue requirements currently? And the revenue requirements really is just the simplistic term for the amount of money we need to generate from our user rates to be able to operate the sewer utility, to pay our operating expenses, to pay our debt service, to pay for any sort of cash-funded capital expenses, and then to ensure that the utility is really self-sustaining year over year. So the sewer utility is an enterprise fund of the village, meaning that it operates a little bit more like a business. We do need to have and want to make sure that we've got adequate reserves to be able to handle emergencies. We also want to make sure that we've got kind of a minimum level of reserves on hand just in case. So that's one reason. The other reason is that you've got a capital improvement plan out over the next several years. So we were asked to analyze that and look at the potential funding sources for capital improvement projects and for the items, the larger items that you might have to borrow for, what might the debt service payments look like, and how does that then fold into the overall revenues and expenses of the utility. And then finally, looking at what sort of rate adjustments might you need, not only for 2025, but long term. And obviously, as you're going to start getting into budgeting for 2025, you're going to make a specific recommendation and move forward potentially with a rate adjustment for next year. But long term, it's always nice to be able to look at what might be coming down the pipe, no pun intended. What do we have, upcoming, and how are we, going to be kind of keeping the sewer utility in a good overall financial position. So there's a lot of items that we'll look at tonight. We'll start with just a historical performance analysis going back several years, just to see kind of is the utility been keeping up with current expenses or historical expenses. We'll look at the capital improvement plan and then talk about future projections from a cash flow standpoint. And then finally talk about the rate adjustments and what we might be seeing out in 2025 and beyond. And, from my perspective, I'm more than happy to take questions as we go if you have any. If not, afterwards too, I'm certainly happy to take any questions too. So you don't have to hold them to the end. So from a historical starting spot, going back to 2019. So really, you've got audit years from 2019 out through 2023, and 2024 is your budget year. We're looking at the historical financial performance of the sewer utility two different ways, on a cash-based method and then a utility-based method. Cash-based method is really just, as its name implies, we are looking at the total recovery of your annual operating and maintenance expenses, your debt service payments that are allocated to the sewer utility, principal and interest payments on debt, any sort of cash-funded capital that the utility has had, and then kind of bringing it all together and comparing that to where your user rates have been over time. Flips to the bottom of the table is looking at the historical performance of the sewer utility on what's called the utility-based method. The utility-based method, and I know you recently went through a water rate increase, the utility-based method would be very similar to how the Public Service Commission would look at the utility if this was a water utility. So it's the same recovery of operating and maintenance expenses, but when we talk about capital recovery, we're switching gears a little bit. Instead of debt service and cash-funded capital expenses year over year, we're looking at recovering depreciation and a rate of return within the sewer utility. So both are very viable methods to be able to look at historical performance. Depreciation and rate of return are non-cash items. You're not writing a check for depreciation, you're not writing a check for rate of return. From a kind of a 5,000 foot level, depreciation recovers the principal of the assets that you have in the ground that the utility has paid for over their lifespan. Rate of return, from a big picture standpoint, recovers the interest expense on those assets. And in the event that you don't have debt outstanding on those assets, it's a measure of financial health and performance, and it's a signalization. So the reason, if you kind of flip to the water side, the reason that the PSC, for example, pays such close attention in your annual reports when you submit them of your rate of return is because it is an immediate signal to them, to you, of the utility's ability to reinvest in itself and do capital projects within your existing rate structure. So it's more just a signalization of and measure of financial health, if that makes sense. So looking at the top of the table on a cash basis, the orange bars going across the page are your annual operating and maintenance expenses. The tan bars are your annual principal and interest expenses related to debt. The green is cash-funded capital expense. So as we look at the purple line is your revenue requirement. So in a few years, you can see it's a little lower than the top, and that's just because you've got some other income, interest income, late fees, those types of items that come in and help offset the revenue requirement. The blue line going across the page is your annual revenue from utility rates. And what we like to see, and what we generally see here on the page, is that the blue line is above our purple line. With some exceptions. If you've got a large cash-funded capital expense you might make in a year, you might say, hey, we're going to choose to use our reserves to the extent we have them to be able to make that expense. We recognize and know that, and next year we know that we're not going to necessarily have a big expense. So one thing that this chart does show, and I don't think it's any surprise to anyone, is that if you look at your orange operating and maintenance expenses and you see the trend going back to from 2019 out through 2024, you can really see that your O&M expenses are one item that has increased pretty consistently, and a big part of that is your treatment-related expenses with MMSD. And before I leave that chart and go to the utility basis, one thing you do see going into 2024 is that you really now, this year, this is really the first year where you are really kind of just below break even when you look at recovering your operating and maintenance expenses and your debt service. You're right about there, but just below it. So, the time is right to be doing an analysis like this and starting to look at where do we need to go from here. If we look at things on a utility-based method, again, the utility historically has been in a very good, position, utility rate-wise, and financially speaking. As you go over time and you see again those increases to operating expenses that have really crept into the extra capacity you did have within your user rates, you're now coming into 23 and 2024 especially, are at a point where you're certainly recovering 100% of your operating expenses, and you're right about break even on depreciation. You really are not recovering any sort of level of rate of return. So both of these would kind of signal to us, hey, it is time to consider some level of rate adjustment as you go into the future. And that's not even, as we start talking about future capital improvement projects. Some of the other kind of historical financial indicators that we look at when we get involved with a long-range cash flow analysis and a utility rate study is your level of reserves. I think probably one of the biggest questions that we get when we're asked to look at a capital improvement plan and kind of look at a holistic long-range cash flow analysis is how much cash should we have within the utility? And we've seen it all. Some feel we have too much, some feel we don't have enough. So we have in the actual chart and detailed analysis a couple of different benchmarks, but the one that we show here is representative of at least 6 months of operating expenses and 1 year's worth of debt service payments. So that is where you see the bars going across the page in terms of your target. That's what that represents on an annual basis. The actual ending cash line is the line going across the page, and you've done a really nice job over time of building up reserves, being just kind of below that line in 2019 and 20, and getting above it here going into the end of last year. So a couple things on that. Number one, that's a minimum. The more cash you have, obviously, the more you've got the ability to do and cash fund projects versus having to take on debt. It also makes you look better in the eyes of, say, rating agency, Moody's, Standard & Poor's. To the extent you are going out to market for debt issuance, kind of the saying "cash is king" is really true when investors, those who are purchasing your debt, are looking at the overall health of the sewer utility. So that's one metric. And, when you look at or think about at least 6 months operating expense, 1 year's worth of debt, in today's environment, kind of one of the more common things you might hear of where you wouldn't have the ability to necessarily collect your utility bills for a period of time would be maybe some level of cyber attack where, the utility, your billing system is down for a short period of time. You need to get by with cash, or you do have, on the capital side, say potentially some emergency where you need access to cash, and you need access to cash right now. Having that as a benchmark is a healthy thing. The other thing is just looking at the operating ratio of are our user rates recovering 100% of our operating expenses and our principal or depreciation expense on the existing assets that you have in the ground. And historically, out through 2023, you've been above kind of 1 times coverage there, which is good and healthy. Going into 2024, obviously, that starts to change. So switching gears from the historical analysis and starting to look at what does the future bring. This table shows your future capital improvement plan out through my little 2038. Thanks. My little screen is hiding that last year. So in 2025, you've got larger projects with the Farm Interceptor project as well as the Ridge Lift Station, and a lot of the Ridge Lift Station is being funded through other sources, primarily impact fees, grants, as well as a developer contribution. In 2027, the next round of more non-routine capital, larger capital projects potentially is out there for County Highway N reconstruction, County Highway BB, as well as some other main reconstruction and lift station roof work. And then in 2030, roughly, I know this, capital improvement plans change year in and year out, but you've got the County Highway N lift station and force main project. And then beyond that, out into the future, 2033 would be Vilas Road, and 2038 is the west side extension of the interceptor work on Vilas Road. So the bottom of this table kind of takes this CIP and breaks it down into potential different funding sources. So the larger capital improvement projects, we would anticipate, beyond the other sources of revenue, impact fees, developer contributions, grants, needing to issue general obligation debt for. So in 2025, 2027, 2030, 2033, and 2038 are right now target years for the issuance of debt related to the sanitary sewer utility. Beyond that, what we've got shown is consistent use year over year of cash coming into the being used for more routine projects, but then out in the future, certainly the sewer lining project in 2028 is something ideally you'd like to be able to use cash for. But then again, more your routine equipment purchases, things of that nature, anticipated to be cash funded.
I'm gonna just step
Yep,
in real
go
quick. So kind of as John's going through this, just keep in mind, this is a cadence that I'd like to get into every year, revisiting, presenting, make sure we're on track. There is that the farm interceptor at this point in time is not planned to go forward in 2025, and that will be consistent through your budget. And there are some costs for the proposed or potential ridge lift station that might, kind of similar to SCADA, occur over 2 years. So again, at this point in time, this is the best estimate and building rates based off of kind of a plan going forward. So all of that has been considered in the final rate recommendation in the last slide. So I'm gonna kick it back to Cameron, or John.
Thank you, Cameron. Okay, so kind of bringing it together and starting to look at just pure cash flow analysis. What does this mean if we move forward with the plan and just looking at the overall revenues and expenses of the utility? So just to give you a flow of how this table works from top to bottom, the top portion of the table shows your total revenues from user rates. Below that is what is recommended in terms of the percentage increase to user rates. As I said, we've got a table at the very end that shows what, if you did move forward with these rate increases, what might that mean for the average residential customer? And then keeping tabs on that on a cumulative basis, and then looking at if you did move forward with those increases, how much additional cash would that bring into the utility, keeping your usage base steady from year to year. We're not making any major assumptions and changes in usage. How much cash would that bring into the utility if you were to move forward with the increase in revenues? Below that is your other revenues coming in. No, sorry, did you want to? Okay. Other revenues coming in, interest income, which has jumped in recent years and now is real money again from where it was a couple of years ago, where you'd probably be better keeping it under your mattress. And then other income, developer contributions, sewer impact / connection fees, certainly a big application of that here next year related to the Ridge Lift Station project. So total revenues kind of going across the page, kind of top mid-level of the page, and then we get into the expense side. Operating and maintenance expenses going out starting in 2024. It's your budget. 2025 was provided to us, and I know is kind of a reduction potentially in some operating related expenses related to collection system work. And then below operating expenses beyond 2025, we're trending it upwards at 3% a year in terms of making an assumption on future expenses. Below that, then we get into your existing and proposed debt. So if we are, say, for example, issuing debt in 2025, the first year you would have principal and interest payments on that debt would be in 2026. So you can see a rate increase happening in 2025, to meet just the overall expenses of the utility, but then also to help fund a portion of the debt service payments coming online starting in 2026. The next time we're showing a rate increase is in 2027, and that is more reactionary to the capital that you'd be borrowing for this that year, starting to take into consideration in outward years. One thing to consider is right now, from a cash flow standpoint, we're just matching the rate increase timing in future years with changes to capital, changes to operating expenses. That 10% in 2027, totally at your discretion to break that up and say, maybe, if this is going to happen, maybe we want to do 5% in 26 and then 5% in 27. It's not the advantage that the sewer utility has compared to the water utility is that it's not a regulated utility. You've got the flexibility as long as the village board makes the decision to raise the rates to move ahead with that. So you've got maximum flexibility to break that up a little bit as you see fit.
Yeah, I think a big question that I look at this is a 10% increase in 2025. I want to make it very clear, our MMSD charges from last year and this year combined increased 28%. Kyla, JJ, and I have went through the budget and eliminated almost $225,000 of internal costs. So those are the costs that we can control to ultimately get to this 10% increase recommendation for 2025. So the village is doing everything we can to control those expenditures. Ultimately, I would not recommend doing a 0% increase in 26 and then another 10% in 27. I think when we would have Ellers come back again, we would have them recommend a smoothing rate process. So as we did last year, that 3% increase, at least doing something so there's not another big increase in 2027. Ultimately, I think we'll end up a little bit better than needing 20% over the course of 3 years. But I think there's a lot of projects that need to kind of shake out here.
So 28% from MMSD in the past 12 months. What is your projection for the next 12 months and 12 months after that, et cetera? I mean, that's a major component of what we are dealing with here. Do we have projections that are factored in here, or is that going to be a surprise every year?
I don't think it's going to be a surprise every year. I think so we had a meeting with those folks and the rest of the communities, and they basically told us expect similar to the same, going forward than it's been the last couple of years. Additionally, it was eye-opening to see how much infrastructure from 1970, 60, that is going to be, again, a driving factor. So to the extent with the known information we have, but I would say once we start getting to year 27 and 28, our voice has been known to MMSD that these rates are very hard. McFarland has made their voice that these rate increases have been hard. Hopefully Madison at some point says enough's enough and tries to at least cap what an increase would be year over year. Growth has helped us to some extent, where the volumetric charges and the fixed charges that as we bring on new residents, that actually helps defray some of the increase from those charges. But yeah, 12%, I would say expect 12 to 15% year over year, every year for the next 5 years, at least for MMSD. And that's a tough pill to swallow when it makes up about 55% of our budget.
Going into the out years of the analysis, the potential rate increases become much more inflationary in nature. Again, as Cameron had said, taking a look at this annually is a really healthy thing to do, and can help fine tune this going forward, especially if some of those trends from MMSD do continue. So, kind of bringing it home and taking a look at if these changes or recommendations do come to fruition, what does it look like? So if you look at more the middle of the page, the sanitary sewer side, we're just right now bringing water in just to show you what your total annual utility bill is between water and sewer, and showing that then on a monthly basis. We're assuming no change to water. Obviously, that's a separate discussion. But if you did look at kind of a 10% increase in 2025, Right now, the average residential customer, assuming that they use 3,500 gallons per month, would pays $46.64 as part of their utility charge for sanitary sewer service. A 10% increase would bring that up by $4.66 to $51.30 a month. 10% in 2027 would be an additional $5.13, and then the 3% increases in the out years would be roughly just under $2 a month. And obviously, those are much more palatable increases than something that is a little larger than inflationary. So in terms of kind of recommendations and just, items for discussion, the first point would be considering a 10% rate increase for 2025. I think that is certainly something that we would be strongly recommending as a result of the analysis. Then beyond that, using general obligation debt as the method of funding the portion of the farm interceptor and the Ridge Lift Station projects in 2025, and then using your sewer user rate revenues to pay for their respective portions of those projects. I realize you've got a lot of other sources of revenue coming in to help fund some portions of those projects. Use cash for your smaller year-over-year equipment purchases, sewer lining projects. Really utilize borrowing for your bigger ticket projects and put yourself in a position where you can use cash but still remain above, at or above your recommended reserve levels for smaller ticket items. The bigger ticket items in the out years of the CIP, again, consider using using general obligation debt and borrowing for those over a 10, 20-year period of time. And then, consider the need for a rate increase in 2027, as well as other inflationary increases in future years.
Yeah, one last kind of comment. The first iteration of this plan showed a 30% increase. Obviously, that was no good. The second iteration of this plan showed about a 15 to 20% increase. Again, no good. So again, I thank Kyla, thanks John. A lot of work went into this to getting to 10%, and I know 10% is very difficult to swallow. I know a lot of residents right now are fighting the impacts of inflation. But this is what we're asking for tonight when we get to the budget really is what's needed to sustain the sewer utility. And happy to have those discussions once we get into the budget discussions. But for now, are there any questions specific to the presentation for John? Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me this evening. And if anything else does come up, you guys know where to find us. So take care. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go do number 7, unfinished business, the CMAR annual report from the DNR.
This is just the response that comes from the DNR of the report it seems like we just submitted not too long ago where we scored very well, and they're confirming we scored very well. Any comments or questions?
No, we don't need to do anything other than thank you for doing it, right?
You don't even have to do that.
Okay, well, we're doing it anyway. So then B is the update on the Ridge Lift Station.
Yeah, my name is Andy Constant. I'm with Strand Associates here with Ty Wallen, who's probably a more familiar face to these meetings for you. But the goal of us coming here, and Kyla invited us to share and present our progress for the Ridge Lift Station design. If you remember, we were here maybe 3-4 months ago to review the preliminary engineering report, which we investigated several different alternatives for a new lift station and force main to serve the eastern area of the village. So here we just wanted to, I guess, give you an idea of where we're at, summary of our progress, and schedule moving forward.
Thanks, Andy. As you mentioned, my name is Tyler Wallen with Strand. Met most of you guys before at previous meetings. So summary of progress. So surveys, typically what we get done first, that would say is about 90% completed. There's just a little bit remaining over on the eastern end. Just want to try to get that out of the way so I can see. Kind of over in this farm field here. Actually, I've been working with the property owner there on getting access to that land, ultimately buying what we would need for the lift station. And when that happens, we'll be able to complete the survey. We also have some minor things to do over at Vilas Road and Progress Drive, where the big interceptor goes back to the Vilas Road lift station. What you see here, this is a wetland delineation map. We did have to get a wetland delineation completed for this project just to determine if we are in it, and if so, what needs to be done. You can see these areas in green does determine there's a wetland that was found there. We do not anticipate to be in the wetland with our lift station. However, this is our force main route over here through Hydrite. We do anticipate some disturbance there, but we anticipate it being less than 10,000 square feet. So that means we'll have to apply for a general permit, which generally is more favorable than an individual permit for wetlands. So we're hoping to stay under that number, which we expect to do. Additional investigation we had to complete was a geotech report. So we got some soil borings. We'd say that's about 80% complete. There's a few additional borings that need to be taken. A couple because they were not able to get into that wetland at Hydrate, just due to the wet nature of the soil. And then also there's a few more that we're going to get in this farm field once we have access to do so. There's an interceptor that extends up to Ridge Road. We need to get some geotech information, soil boring information on that, where that pipe's gonna go. With that, I'll go back to Andy for the lift station design.
All right. And right now we are, I'd say, nearing a 50% design completion for the Ridge Lift Station, working closely with the village and trying to mold this project to what's needed here. And we wanted to share some of the elevation views and the renderings of the vehicle storage garage, which will house the control building, the control room for the electrical controls for the pumps, the pipes, discharge pipes for the pumping station, a restroom, and a generator inside of the building. And I'll just run through a couple of these elevation views here. We were able to put a rendering here, which wasn't in the original packet, but you can see two garage doors here for storage, and then this back portion along here will be more designated towards the lift station. Again, here's the back or the north side of the station here. The wet well where the sewage will come into the station will be pumped through piping into this room that's more readily accessible to village staff for maintenance, and then the force main will continue out. And again, this floor plan was shared previously. It's in the packet, so I don't know if there's any questions about the layout and where we're at today, but I think we have a pretty solid start here, and we should be getting a 50% design submittal here near the end of the month, with a 90% design submittal to follow around November, hoping to advertise for bids if we can, December, January timeframe.
Can I get a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The roofing material, is it asphalt, or were you considering steel?
So we did review steel and asphalt shingle. The asphalt shingle, there's I think a 20-year design, or there's a more robust 50-year design, which is a fraction of the cost of a steel roof. And I think, Kyla, correct me if I'm wrong, we ended up going the heavier duty 50-year asphalt shingle roof. Yeah.
That sounds right, yeah.
Okay, and then was solar ever considered in the project?
No, we did not investigate solar.
So that will be, last night at the Public Work Committee, kind of reestablishing some goals for Public Works. We're gonna bring that back to that committee either October or November. And then that will be proposed later on in the project. Basically, whenever we're considering building facilities, one, what is the grant available? Have we applied? And then what would be the net cost of the project? But in order to apply for some of these grants, we have to update some of our internal documents. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, because with the fact that it's gonna be a lift station that runs basically maximum during the day, and you have no trees, so you're gonna get 100% solar. And hopefully there's some discounts or kickbacks or some sort that would help the project.
Right.
But I'd like very much for it to be considered, or talked about at least.
And that's great. That's something we can take back to our electrical engineers, and, you know, if there's a preliminary findings that we can present to the village, then we can do so once some of that other stuff's figured out
Okay,
on your
thank
end.
you.
Yeah, so next we'll just talk about the the force main itself. That's about similarly to the lift station, is at about a 50% design completion right now. The route has changed slightly, just to reduce the number of bends. Less bends is typically better, less maintenance issues. We also were able to improve the profile a little bit, to reduce it to just one high point, where you'd need a blow off, and as well to kind of reduce bury depth, help control construction costs. You can kind of see it in red here, or orange. It still kind of goes in the general route that Hydrite had recommended, which was kind of in front of their trailer parking here. And then it kind of comes on a straight line and then gets online on Trillium Trail, and then ultimately back to the lift station, which that part has not changed. And then the gravity sewer design shown in green, that's pretty much in the exact same location horizontally as we had originally planned. We're just kind of working through the design, and that it's going to get kind of deep as you get further to the east, closer to the lift station. So we're going to try to make an attempt to keep it in between the curbs as far as our trenches, but it is going to be fairly deep of a trench there. And then as far as easements and land acquisition goes, as I mentioned, we've been working with the property owner here on acquiring the land. What you see in green there is what we would anticipate needing to buy permanently. For the road extension there, you can see the cul-de-sac bulb there on the left side of your screen, the south, the lift station, and then the interceptor going to the north. You can also see there's a little bit extra space on the east. We do anticipate needing a small stormwater quality basin there. We are over the limit need that will trigger that, so we do have some space for stormwater, just because we're increasing our impervious area.
Ty, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Quick
No,
question.
go ahead, Mike.
Purchasing the land for the interceptor running north to Ridge Road, is there a reason that can't be an easement within the property, the private properties in that area? Assuming that there's gonna be residential lots backing up to the existing residential lots on Heather, or even if it is under a future roadway or something, is there reason we need to purchase that particular strip of land to do this?
So the reason we're currently looking into acquiring that land is the thought for a future bike path in the future to run from Ridge Lift Station, from the development down through here and connect onto the glacial drumlin path.
Okay, I'll echo the same comment. Can't it be a utility and or pedestrian access easement across private lands?
I would say, given the unique circumstances with the landowner and the potential developer, this was the cleanest way that we could keep moving forward and then ultimately have what we want when it's all said and done and development comes. They were hesitant to document for sure anything that would be, granted as an easement and or dedication to the village at this point. And so we wanted to keep Strand moving. We wanted to be able to potentially put this project in, whether this current developer's there or not. And you guys just met earlier today
Yeah.
with the broker, and the price is just ag field. And in the grand scheme of this project, seemed like a lot cleaner route to go, given that there was kind of weird hesitancy when we brought that up, that it could just be a more traditional dedication and or easement.
Okay, I mean, obviously our minds are on dollars coming off our last conversation, so that just seemed like a logical scenario to me.
It was the first thing brought up, but met with resistance.
Yes, so thanks JJ and Kyla. Just to finish up on this sheet here, so the green is what we're anticipating needing permanently to acquire, and then the red would be kind of a temporary construction easement just for parking of equipment. Basically, the farmer won't be able to plant crops there because there'll be a trench there, there'll be construction equipment, there'll be all sorts of disturbance. So just having that to kind of give them some room to work. And then last discussion, or as far as land acquisition goes, back to Hydrite, we did just send them this exact exhibit you see here, just to kind of reaffirm their buy-in into the force main route. I haven't had anything back from them yet. We sent it over on Monday, but we'll look forward to continue working with them, making sure they're good with it, and then ultimately getting the easement written up to follow that route. With that, I'll turn it back over to Andy, who can talk the OPCC.
Our final item here of the recap, but if you wanted to dive into this opinion of probable construction costs a little bit further, we've got different line items for the lift station, the storage garage, the what's that? Lift station, mechanical, electrical, and process, the force main and gravity sewer, and then the anticipated land acquisition costs, which can maybe be updated after your discussions today. But the general summary here is that we're projecting that we'll be underneath our $7 million budget that was budgeted, I believe, in the CIP. So as design progresses, we'll be able to eliminate more of those unknowns in the design and hopefully reduce that construction contingency that you see highlighted in yellow on the left. Like I said, as we eliminate some more of those unknowns.
In the actual construction through the wetlands, how much dewatering has been built into this?
A fair amount, actually, yeah. Not only through the wetlands, but at the lift station site itself. I think there's, maybe groundwater at 8 to 10 feet. I think as part of the more in geotech investigation, they're gonna put in a groundwater monitoring well just because the bore caved in and they weren't able to take great readings on the depth of the groundwater. So based on, some similar recent projects, we've included a pretty heavy contingency for groundwater dewatering.
Has any consideration been given to directional drilling the one wetland spot that you have through the marsh behind Hydrite as an alternative to open cut?
We did review that, not in depth. I think when you do horizontal directional drilling, the tendency is to get that pipe a little bit deeper in the ground to prevent frack out, or what they call the through installation. So I think we could, if we think that's a viable option, we can see how deep that would take us. And if, I'm just thinking more for maintenance in the future, if we had to dig that pipe up, how deep we would get, but that is a good option.
Okay, just wondering on, saves on construction costs.
Sure.
Yeah, and so there's no other questions. Andy kind of touched on the schedule earlier, but yeah, we're looking to meet with the village the end of the month here, or early in October, to go through our 50% design documents, and then moving forward with November 90%, and then depending on how everything goes, looking to be ready to bid end of the year or early in 25. So, got anything else to add? Otherwise, any other questions from you guys?
I guess my next question is for Cameron and JJ. I understand, we approved the full design of this, utilizing impact fees to be ready for this when it is time. What is the decision, or how is this process gonna go for, it is time, and then the current developer bails? Understood, we have plans that are ready to build anytime we want to at that point, but how far in front of the horse is this cart gonna get? You know, do we have a situation where there's a developer's agreement signed and there's cash coming from them to fund their portion of this before we even go to bid? Or what are we gonna do, and how's that scenario being treated, so we're not on the hook for $7 million minus their 1.8 investment, and we've got almost nothing coming into this lift station?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So the lift station, the way it was presented in Eller's summary, the 1.8 is from one specific, another 1.8 is coming from another source that was kind of wrapped in there. To your point, I think we're getting to a point where the investment in Trillium is gonna have to be made sooner rather than later if this doesn't move forward.
And I
Yeah.
completely
So-
understand
so-
that, but
so
I think we're
think-
talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of an investment in Trillium, when we're talking about $7 million for a station that potentially has no houses coming to it.
Yeah, and it is, the station is taking some relief off, obviously, the Trillium and access. So one of the things that, you know, we talked about was revisiting the sewer connection fees, or essentially creating a sewer connection fee for any new houses coming in to that lift station to recover. If you're going my honest opinion, you're probably about 5 years. If we started it today, and based off of what we have between impact fees, between what we have from another bucket, we're probably 5 or 6. We'd be 5 or 6 years before there'd be issues if there wasn't any development that happened out there.
And I understand, I mean, this comes from several of us who've been on this board for a long time, who have heard about these developers that are coming for literally decades, and nobody has shown up. And that's just my apprehension. If we don't have somebody who's literally moving dirt out there, I'm very skeptical of it actually happening.
I just brought up my email to make sure that this was just last week. We reached out to them again to make sure we're on the same timeline, and we are, but we're just sharing with them that means they have to have signed DA in place by February or early March at the latest, which essentially I was thinking bid, and we're sitting on it waiting to decide if we're signing it or not. They said they are. They're planning to have the homes on the same timeline. Depending on maybe internal conversations, if they did go away, like we talked about probably starting 2 years ago again with these guys and this whole work, put it on the shelf and we're ready to go.
Okay.
One other piece would be we'd own this land now and have it, so when the next one comes, that piece is covered. We've had different conversations. Is it worth it then to come back with a revised, let's get through, given all the work we've done with Hydrite, maybe we come back after we run it by him and it makes sense, get the force main through Hydrite's property and be done with that kind of piece, but hold off on the majority of the.
And I'm all for this planning purpose, I'm all for buying the land, so we've got it solidified. None of that changes if XYZ, if these people go away and somebody else comes. I get that, and I'm all for that. My only concern when I heard about the actual bidding schedule, which I was surprised by, was, yeah, I just want to be cautious about actual construction expenditures if we don't have a guaranteed user.
And I think honestly, part of this is, you know, I don't think any developer has ever really been given a good number on what their commitment would be. So once we could give that to a developer, and it from their responses fit within their budgets, that gives me a little bit more confidence that it's going to happen.
And I agree, and I understand, we probably have lost developers because we haven't gone this far down the road, that they didn't know what this number was and they went away in fear that it was 10x of what it is. And so I'm still absolutely in favor of the planning that we've done right up to construction.
And Mike, I should clarify, when I meant advertise and bidding, we'll be ready for it. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I also, I guess, implied that, but no, we're ready for bid.
In
I
their
guess is
defense, that's the direction they've been given by us until these guys stop answering. We want, I mean, because
Yeah. Shelf ready.
yes, but if the developers stay on the track they keep telling us they're going to, then this is all lining up perfectly, but also close enough that it's making me nervous if they are staying interested at the pace they're going. So we got to keep Ty and Andy going.
So there's possibly 2 developers now?
No, sorry, just the one.
So the
It's-
1.5 million is the developer, 1.8.
1.8. So this is modeled out 20 years. So the other 1.8 million is not projected. It's 10 plus years out. So it's not, basically, it is assuming something will happen in the form of connection fees or something starting from year 11 on to
No,
20.
I just heard that number and thought maybe it could get better.
And then we're gonna ask Strand to keep moving that price down. So,
Yeah, that always works.
I say that, they can keep moving it down, but bid day is gonna tell you what it's really gonna be. It doesn't really,
Mike, do you have any insight for us?
I know.
Okay, so, anything else on, number 2, the Ridge Lift Station and Force Main packet? Okay, again, thank you guys for your work.
Thanks for having us.
And then number 8, new business, discuss and consider the 2025 water utility budget.
So when I present budgets, I enjoy boring budgets, and that's essentially what water is going to show you this year. Water is asking for $90 increase in their total expenditure, their $2+ million budget. Again, one of the things that we did is we reevaluated our current budget. So we'll look, which is presented on the screen. Because there is not a recommended rate increase, revenues are being projected to be the same as what was budgeted in 2024. We'll probably slightly miss revenues in 24, which is a good thing. I think sometimes utility commissions look at that, and you got to remember that the rates are built into 2 factors. They're built into fixed and variable. Fixed is going to cover the cost of debt service capital, but variable is only there to cover chemicals, electricity. So that's all based off of how much consumption is actually being used. So if we miss revenues, which we probably will slightly in 2024, that means that there are going to be some expenditures such as electric and other things that come a little bit less than anticipated. So in 2025, that's why you're not seeing, while we know we're adding customers, I feel more confident that there's no reason to increase estimated expenditures. There was the biggest increase you will see is for purchase of electricity. So we're asking for a $5,000 increase compared to last year's budget. We reduced in the budget maintenance of mains by $18,500. Realized that number was what was asked for that line item was, and maintenance of hydrant was really kind of a very aggressive kind of 5-year cycle of some of the existing infrastructure. With Kyla's help and JJ's help, we kind of, again, and not wanting to face additional rates in the near future, we pulled back some of those expenditures. So ultimately, from a bottom line perspective, the sewer utility or the water utility last year asked for $1,619,809. This year, asking for $1,619,879, so a $70 increase. And I will let Kyla talk about some of the capital that's coming up.
Do you want me to talk about the operating one there? Sure. So one thing that we came across in 2024 was on Tower 2, we had a mixer that ended up needing to be replaced mid-year. In finding this out, we learned that most of our mixers for Tower 2 and Tower 3 have a 10-year lifespan. So with that, we've reached out to 3 companies as of right now to look at a maintenance of reservoirs maintenance agreement with them to kind of spread out the cost over the next potentially 3 to 5 years. That would cover a new mixer for Tower 3, removing the mixer that wasn't removed previously. In 2027, we are required to have both of our towers to be drained and have a washdown. It's scary to have both towers offline in the same year, so we're proposing to do one in 26 and one in 27 to give us that buffer, as well as any power washing and all of our annual maintenance that we have to do for our inspections. This money will come from a water tower fund that Cameron has somewhere else.
So there was a water tower reserve fund that was established to do just this, replace the reoccurring expenses as well as painting the towers. So this money will be used for its intended purpose, essentially causing no impact to the users.
And then moving on to the capital expenses, we have our annual equipment purchases that are split between Public Works, our water, and our sewer utility. For our standard equipment that needs to be replaced, as well as a few things that we're requesting to help make our team a little more efficient. The other thing, moving forward with the financial management plan that was approved by Village Board for the 2026 projects are going to be the 2025 cost incurred for design for those projects that will occur in 2026. Specifically, we have well number 2 that is in need of a full-on reconstruction and improvement schedule. It's not up to codes, regulations. Specifically, our chemical room is all within the well, and those should be separated. So that's going to go through a full-on rehabilitation. Additionally, we have Ollie Street that is proposed currently in 2026 to be reconstructed. What the cost you're seeing there is a cost that's split, that's the total design cost, but that would be split between the utilities and Public Works. One thing to note is the sewer rate study did show that that was going to be in 2027 to be reconstructed. And so the design costs wouldn't incur until 2026, and that's something that we're recommending to move forward with, to move out of the financial management plan for 2026. And then our last capital improvement project that we have for 2026 would be the McCarthy Loop and the path. So right now there is no northern loop for our water main that connects under the interstate. And so we are proposing a additional water main loop to the north side, and I can show some where that's located. We did find out that there's a casing pipe already underneath the interstate, but this would provide us another loop for when future development continues north where the Amazon site is, and further north of there, if there is a water main break, we do have redundancy through that connection.
There is some, while it won't cover the full cost of it, there is some water impact fees available to offset the water loop portion of the project in water impact fees. As Kyla did mention, similar to Public Works, we are recommending eliminating, I know it's kind of silly that it's in this memo, just the timing of when all of the plans are approved, ultimately recommending that it's in this budget memo just to kind of show it's on the horizon, but the engineer dollars aren't actually going to come until 26 for a 27 project. Any questions on water?
So we need a motion to pass, correct?
To adopt the 2025 water utility budget.
So I'll make a motion just like he said.
I'll second.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No one abstaining. Okay, that passes. Thank you. And then number 3, proposed sewer budget request memo.
All right. I know we talked about water or sewer quite a bit already. So the biggest portion of the sewer budget is the Madison Metropolitan Sewer District. Again, we are, and I will do a more detailed analysis probably in February for this commission on what it would cost and the additional staffing it would take to bring on our own sewer treatment plant. I know, Mike, you had asked me to bring that to the commission. But just right now, those numbers don't align. So essentially, before we even take care of any of our internal expenditures, we're increasing the MMSD charges almost 190,000. Kyla and I went through the budget very detailed. We cut, like I said, roughly 250,000 from our operating lines to help offset the increase of MSD charges. But I will pass the rest of the budget off to you.
Perfect. So a good portion of that just operating budget line item that we cut was in a capital improvement line for essentially televising and CIPPing, like cured in place, any concrete pipe. So we've come up with a plan that over the next 5 years, we're going to televise the entire village, come up with one larger project that could be potentially capital funded, correct? Instead of doing it in bits and pieces where the cost of that would be exponentially higher. So we're going to come up with a large game plan, and that's where a good portion of that was cut. Our other the capital expenses for this year, as you are fully aware, is the Ridge Lift Station in Force Main. That was already discussed by Strand staff, as well as the additional annual equipment purchases that are pretty standard throughout the utility. Again, with potential 2026 projects, we have the 2025 incurred costs. As we already discussed about Ollie Street, that would be split between the three, and is now being pushed until a 2026 design and a 2027 construction.
Yeah, so with that, I will open. So what we're recommending, unlike the water utility, we are formally requesting a 10% increase to sewer rates for 2025. So that would go into effect January 1, 2025, and be effective for the entire year. And to kind of cover our shortfall. I do want to mention too, this $7.2 million. So that we're always going to put the gross costs. So 385,000 of that is subtract 385,000 for the design and planning of that, and that's the number we're actually at for the remaining investment that's due. So as we continue to make investments in that number, it will continue to kind of go down.
Okay, so do we need two motions, or one for the increase and another for the budget?
Yep, so there'll be, one motion to approve the 2025, to adopt the 2025 sewer utility budget. And then the second motion would be to adopt the 10% increase as of January 1, 2025.
Okay, any questions before we move forward? Mike?
Nope, I'm just gonna make a motion to adopt the budget as presented.
Okay, a second, please.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other questions? So all those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Anyone opposing? And no one abstaining, so that passes. Then I'll make a motion to, because you know I love to do this, a motion to approve the 10% increase in the fees to the users. Is that correct? Way to say it? I'll second. And John second. Any other discussion on that one?
I would probably, with 2024, staying within our 24 budget numbers, I would like to get some communication out to our residents explaining why. So similar to the community portal letters, I would like to kind of show them where they can let their voice be heard at MMSD and kind of explain why so if that's okay with this board, kind of ultimately with this motion like direction for a communication piece out to residents.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that from our perspective as the committee to, show that, we did everything we could do, in fact, decreased our overall budget for 2025, but the increase is solely to make up for the MMSD increases.
Yeah, no, I encourage that
And
very
I'll,
much.
yeah, and I'll ditto that as well.
So we voted on the raise, right? We just have a motion? Okay, and John, you seconded it, correct? Yep. Okay, so all those in favor of approving that, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? And no abstaining. Okay, thank you, everybody, again. And then moving to the engineer's report.
One more
Oh,
thing.
There's one thing, back truck.
One at a time, please.
Yes, vac truck, sewer vac truck.
Yep.
That was on the agenda for discuss and consider. We have a old sewer vac truck from 2005 that has reached its lifespan. Brown Equipment has offered to purchase that from us while giving us a new one as well. And so I am here to request that we move forward with purchasing that, and Cameron knows where the funds come from that.
So as part of the sewer utility, we have it's separate from impact fees. It's called an equipment replacement fund. So basically, we take and that's what will happen to this purchase. We take the asset, which will now be $485,000 divided over 20 years, and we'll put money into essentially a saving account. What we're asking tonight is taking money out of that saving account and buying as planned per the replacement schedule.
Question, so this one is 100% on the utility, not shared by other departments, correct?
Correct.
Oh, what other, besides the valve exerciser that we just purchased, are there any other items within the fleet that are 100% utility responsibilities?
Not utility, no, I don't think so. Street sweeper, I think, is one that's almost the other way, on the general fund. Just because it's stormwater related, I think most of them have that traditional split.
Okay.
So, and you said we're giving the old one to them?
They're paying it. They're paying us for it. They're trading it.
And so
Trading it.
that is included in this?
That is included in that price. Yep, for the $485,000.
And how do we get it from Indiana?
It's actually in McHenry, Illinois, and they will deliver it to us
For no fee?
for no fee.
Excellent. And then the last one is there a warranty? And what is it?
Yes, there is a warranty. I do not know the length of it, but I can find that out and make sure.
As long as you think it's good, that's good enough for me.
Okay, I will double check that before I sign it.
Perfect. Anything else on the vac truck?
No, I'll make a motion to approve purchase of the vac truck as presented this evening.
And a second? I'll second. Any other questions or discussion?
This will trigger having to bring the replacement schedule back. So we'll delete this asset, we'll add it on, and it will create a new annual amount. So that will come in October.
Okay. So all those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And no abstaining, so that passes. Thank you very much. Director's report.
Engineers report? Yes.
Okay, engineer, sorry.
Nope, no problem. So we'll give it a brief update on the few developer projects going on. West Lawn Estates, we are continuing to work with the developer on a lift station submittal. The developer has begun laying underground piping, sewer, force main, water main, storm sewer, and we'll be continuing to look forward for getting that lift station moving along once we get some approved drawings. Quarry Ridge, we are working with that developer as well. Going back and forth, we actually just got a resubmittal on their plans. They've submitted all their permits to us, and it's basically whenever they're wanting to go forward with Phase D of that. They do anticipate it beginning in October, at least that's what they told us. And they have all the pieces in place to start if they choose. Amazon facility, no secret what's going on there. We had a pre-con with them in August. They're going to begin grading activities, stormwater management, getting their ponds going. They've mobilized to the site. As far as utilities concerned, public water and sewer are anticipated to take place in the spring of '25. And the hydrite water main relocation, originally, I don't know if this body has heard much about that, but they had asked that we look into designing a little reroute of a water main around an addition for them, and then, but there's been no updates on that. We've not heard anything from them on that. Village utility projects, Ridge Lift Station, we've all spoken at length about that, so I will not go any more with that. And then the SCADA project, there was a pre-construction conference in June. They've started ordering some equipment, the generator. The generator could take about a year to procure, just due to the backlog, and then continuing to work through the shop drawing process. And that will start to happen on and off in 2025. And that's my report. If there's any questions for me?
Nope, and again, my apologies for.
No problem.
I think I've jumped over you twice now.
That's okay. I just, Kyla was right there, so, but no problem at all.
What can
Thank
I
you.
say? Come on. So again, thank you. And then now director's report.
So 2 quick updates on my end. Well 3's engine was removed last week. We have an auxiliary engine and a gear that's associated with the pumping equipment. We got rid of it in prep for the SCADA project where it's unneeded with the new generator that's coming through. And then well number 4 has a new chlorine tank and a new Vega reader, which is the system that weighs it instead of having an actual scale. It's a automatic reader that reads the volume on it. So well 4 has the most chlorine that's pumped because it uses, well 4 pumps the most out of all of our wells. And so we ordered a larger chlorine tank so we can eliminate the amount of times that Hawkins, who's our chlorine supplier, continues to come to the village. My one other thing that's not in my director's report that was discussed at Public Works yesterday is the potential to have one night with both Public Works and Utilities meetings. This way they coincide very well together, where we would keep the utility meeting at 5 o'clock, but I am curious if the second Tuesday works for this group to have the utility commission meeting.
It would normally be the first Tuesday, right? Because that's when Public Works is.
But we would going
Okay.
forward, we would recommend that it would be the second Tuesday, both meetings. That reason being that aligns really well with Village Board. So essentially, Village Board would meet the third Monday of the month. So then any action items could be taken from Public Works or Utility Committee right to Village Board.
Is there a complication with doing it on Wednesday versus Tuesday? This group is used to Wednesdays. I will selfishly say that for me, Tuesdays are significantly more busy than Wednesdays.
And I work on Tuesdays now until October, or until the end of October.
It has, Plan Commission.
What time's Plan Commission
They're
start?
coming in here in 15 minutes. So I don't remember.
And
if
this
we
one
touched on it. Could it go to the first?
This wouldn't start till November, right? So you said you had
At
to work-
least.
Oh, this would be in November?
I mean, correct, yeah, we wouldn't look to start it in October.
Yeah, I'm clear in November, it's just September and October, I work Tuesdays and Thursday nights.
Also, it wouldn't matter first week or second week of the month. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays, or okay.
No, I work every Tuesday and Thursday until November.
As long as we have a little bit of time to figure it out, my 2 cents after thinking about it for 24 hours from last night. And I don't know if there's a possibility that it's like we talked about last night, is there a guaranteed time? Do we meet 5 to 5:30 for this and 5:30 to 6:30 for Public Works? And if you don't get through the agenda, then it pushes to the next meeting.
That's what I would strongly recommend. I would recommend that village, or I guess if it's on Tuesday, it would be 5:30 to 6 would be utility. So that way, utility commission members who are on both don't have to sit.
Well, and
A
if we were
half
talking
hour.
about consolidating it for consultants, et cetera, if Plan Commission is tonight and we're all talking about the same similar setups, Wednesday sure makes a lot of sense to me.
the same
I
night.
would if the group thinks that would work. Selfishly, I love it. I think you'd like it. There's times when we have to do all three, and I would love to have just one night.
If we could talk about that condensed time frame where we would basically limit the meeting length and any items would have to roll over, it makes sense to me. Like I said, I know that's being selfish for me, but
selfish for all of
being
us.
on both.
Selfish for our
So
consultants.
what would that look like? So that would be 5
To
or
5,
5:30 to 6.
No,
This is-
Most
5.
likely, this will be 5 to 5:30, because
Okay.
this historically is easy.
Half hour
Yep.
Pretty uniformly with the
Yep.
exception. of
Public
this
Works gets an
budget
hour.
And Public Works
That's,
is pretty
yep.
uniformly an hour as well.
And then plan rolls in at 6.
I'm fine. That would be wonderful. And so then it would be Wednesday.
It's cleaner when, I mean, you've all remember when we do have developers coming too, that's an awful lot nicer for them too, with, hey, come on board with whether it's concept, whatever you're talking about, boom, 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 right in a row. You're on an agenda, it's one night if they're coming from somewhere else.
And that would start, what, the 13th of November? Works for me.
So if maybe,
I'll take it to Public Works in October, confirm it, and then I'll bring it back to Utilities in October, and then we can move forward starting in November. It'll be official discuss and consider for that, if that works for everybody. So October will still be the second Wednesday at 5 o'clock.
Okay, so are we ready to set the meeting date? Or Director, you're done?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you again. So October 9th, 5 PM here. Everybody check? Okay, so we'll set the next meeting date for the Utility Commission on the 9th of October, 5 PM. And future agenda items, I really want to start talking about impact fees. And the other thing that was, I read in the paper is about excess chlorine in the system. Some people are getting up in arms about it, so as long as we're good to go, I'm happy with that. Okay?
Absolutely. I can look into that and bring something back to the commission.
Okay, and then number 13, closed session. The Village of Cottage Grove Utility Commission will enter into a closed session pursuant to the Wisconsin State Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specific public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. So I would like a roll call for a closed session.
We'll need a second.
Oh, a second, please.
Hackle,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Russell, Stoa,